Today we're going to look at the groins, the most undertrained, underutilized, undertreated muscle in our lower quarter. How often do you think about stretching your groins? You probably just do the butterfly stretch, and you probably just round over and you're just stretching your back more than your groins. Today we're going to look at two stretches. One that looks at the hip flexor part of the groins, and one that looks at the hamstring part of the groins, which shows how fascinating they are. They can play into the back of the hip, and they can play into the front of the hip. So when your leg's behind you, it's working the hip flexor part of the groins. When your leg's going in front of you, it's working the hamstring part of the groins. Every phase of gait, every phase of running, every phase of walking, the groins are important. They stabilize the pelvis in this lateral frontal plane. They work opposite of the glutes. So if the groins are tight, the glutes aren't going to work that well. So rather than just hammering on the glutes and doing clamshells and side-to-side walks and deadlifts, let's actually look at the groins, strengthen them, and stretch them a little bit. We got two stretches today, and then we got one glute strengthener that pairs well with groin stretching. The first one's kind of funny. It's called the frog pose or frog stretch. You're going to have your knees as far out as possible. You might already feel a stretch. And then you start to tuck that tailbone under. So I just drive my belly button up to my chin. And then you walk those hands forward and lean forward as far as possible while maintaining that pelvis tucked under. The hope is you'll feel a stretch in your belly, in your deep groin, and you hold it there. Holding this here, ideally 2 minutes if your knees can take it. Doing a carpet's a little bit more comfortable than this flooring. 2 minutes is ideal, 30 seconds is okay, but try and don't go for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, actually try and drive your knees into the floor. So right now my knees are pushing inwards, both of them. 30 seconds there. And after that 30 seconds, and then I sink down a little bit further. That's fascinating about muscles in your brain. When you engage them, they release. The tailbone stays tucked under, sinking as far down as possible. So I tore my groin, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So that was a big stretch on my right side. I tore the hip flexor side of it. Next one, the hamstring part of it. So we're going to get into quadruped and scoot back just a tiny bit. Quadruped, and you're going to stick that leg outwards. The first thing I want you to do is put your hand on your back, the same arm as your leg, put that on your back. I want you to feel what position is your back in. Mine right now is tucked under just a little bit. I need you to think, can I stick my tailbone upwards? And now that I get that deep stretch through the groin into the medial hamstring, stick that tailbone up to the ceiling, driving it up. Or even if you think about it, arch your back, like exaggerate it. If you're stiff like me, you won't be able to arch your back. That's literally as far as I can go. Secondarily, keep your hand there. Feel, are you rotated upwards? If so, really try and drive that butt down. So I'm trying to stick my pelvis down to the ground, which immediately feels a little bit deeper stretch in the hamstring, medial hamstring part of my groins. So keep it level and keep it tilted upwards, and then you get that groin stretch. If that's enough, that's totally fine. If you want to progress it, then you do a rock back. So I'm rocking my butt backwards. The key is, let me show you the side profile. The key is, so there's the tilts. Try and drive that tailbone upwards and try and drive that groin downwards. Whew, that's a nice stretch. And then you rock backwards. The key is don't let that butt drop under. Arch that tailbone, keep it arched as far as possible as you can. Once you feel it starting to tilt under, that's where your limit is. The more you do this, the more flexible you will get. Rock back and forth. You can tell this is hard for me. Definitely need to work on this. I'm going to correct myself. Ideally, you want to get that lateral line stretch. Keep your foot planted down if possible. But I'll coach you through that when I give this to you during your appointment. Tailbone up to the ceiling, pelvis drops under, rock back and forth, don't let it rock under. The glute stretch, the glute strengthen, number 3, is in this position. Can you anchor your hands, anchor the core, and lift that foot upwards? And this is engaging that glute. Totally normal to cramp. I'd be surprised if you didn't cramp. You hold it there engage this, engage the core, try and not let that rotate. Obviously, I need to work on my groin flexibility, so that rotation is expected. That's totally fine for now, but eventually you want to learn how to keep this level, lift up without letting this back rotate upwards. So I'm going to hold here so you can actually see decent. Good. You saw me bend my knee, that's the progression. But for now, just lift that foot up, feel that butt burn. So three exercises. Frog stretch for the hip flexor part of the groin, the rock back the groin, rock back for the hamstring part of the groin, and the end range lift for the glute and the groin stretch. That's gonna really loosen up your hip, loosen up the groin, strengthen the hip, and you promise you'll feel a big difference when you're walking, when you're cutting side to side, when you're running. Once you realize how restricted these are and how tender they are, you'll want to keep stretching them. As always, it's always good to preface any type of stretching with self-massage. So you can do the typical foam roll, lacrosse ball, kettlebell, softball releases to the groins. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.